The Middle Colonies. The Middle Colonies are a much larger region than the New England colonies. However, they only have one key term for it, for this section, the pacifist. So let's start with New York. New York began in 1624 when the Dutch West Indies Company began trading in the Americas. Originally, New York was not New York. Instead, it was the New Netherlands, created by the Dutch West Indies Company. The company began recruiting settlers by a very wonderful land deal at the time. Anyone who brought 50 settlers in to work the land received more land. Unfortunately, you had to be wealthy in order to provide transportation for these additional settlers. So most of this land went to people called patroons. Patroons were men, rich landowners, who were able to recruit others from the Netherlands most of the time. However, it could have been English at the same time. And they recruited people to come by saying, I will pay your way. Well, the patroon gains more land by bringing in settlers. Well, in 1664, there's a conflict between the English and the Dutch in which the governor of New Netherlands surrenders the colony and leaves. He literally leaves, flees the colony. At that point, it's renamed New York by the Duke of York, who was the commanding officer of the English fleet. He becomes the new ruler, so to speak, of this colony. Now, the Duke allowed for elected legislature and provided the people of New York with a lot of opportunities. However, there was still conflict within New York, and we're going to talk about it when we discuss the history of New Jersey. New Jersey is just south of New York, but originally it was part of New York. In fact, the Duke of York was convinced to give the southern part of New York, New Jersey, to two proprietors. They began trying to make their colony successful. So they started recruiting, and they gave large amounts of land on generous terms to the people that would settle in New Jersey. They provided religious freedom to these people, and overall they wanted to recruit as many people as possible. In addition to this religious freedom, people were also provided trial by jury. This was something that we take for granted today, but at the time it was not a guarantee. People wanted to be allowed to have their court case presented to their peers. This was not always the case. Most often, one judge, determined the outcome, the fate of the accused. So this was a very big benefit to the settlers in New Jersey. They were also able to have a representative assembly and give people the ability to vote in representatives that would make decisions for them. Unfortunately, those proprietors got a little greedy, and they decided to start charging rent to those that were living in New Jersey. It didn't go over well, and the proprietors were forced to sell, I'm not certain if sell is the correct word, but give New Jersey back to the king. And so New Jersey becomes a royal colony. Pennsylvania had a very different history. William Penn in 1680 asks the king for a proprietary colony in America. William Penn designed Philadelphia, the capital, by himself. He also wrote Pennsylvania's first constitution by himself, and he was a very wise marketeer. Remember, he's in charge of a proprietary colony, so he needs to make money, and he needs to bring people into his colony. So what he did is he advertised his colony in pamphlets written in several different languages dispersed throughout Europe. Pennsylvania, therefore, had a very diverse population. It wasn't just British that were living in Pennsylvania. In fact, there was a large German population that lived in Pennsylvania, or that colonized in Pennsylvania. Now, Penn himself was a member of the Quaker religion. The Quakers had been exiled from England because of their belief system. The king believed that their ideals, their principles, threatened other religions and the overall belief system of England. One of the major problems that the king had was that those in Pennsylvania, the Quakers, were pacifist. Key term, pacifist, people who do not believe in war. And the king had spent plenty of time in war. So he was upset that the pacifists would not do what was best to increase the land area and the stability of England by going to war. Economically, the middle colonies were all very similar. Again, they had fertile soil. The climate was milder. They're slightly, in some regions, they're more southern than the New England colonies. And because they were farther from the ocean, they don't have the ocean problems that the New England colonies had. So, milder climate and better soil allowed them to produce more. Larger tracts of land and bigger harvests, we know where this is going sooner or later. They were able to grow large quantities of wheat and other cash crops. This is a key term. A cash crop is just what it sounds like, a crop that is sold for cash. It's sold in markets to get more money. These cash crops required more labor. Again, you know where I'm going. Numerous industries were also established in the middle colonies, carpentry and flour making, which only makes sense if they're going to produce large amounts of wheat, they're going to produce flour. We have lumber, mining, and small-scale manufacturing, all available in the middle colonies. These occurred mostly in your larger towns, but they would have occurred somewhat throughout the smaller towns as well. A more diversified economy than the South would have, but not necessarily as much as the New England colonies, because New England has a lot more manufacturing and a lot more industries that are being established during this time. So now that we've talked about the middle colonies, I'd like you to take quiz 1.3.